He lifted the wine bottle, looked me in the eye, and poured it down my head. Slow, deliberate, like he was rinsing out a stain. The chandeliers blinked, people swallowed, and for a full minute the only sound was wine sliding down fabric. My name is Maya Bennett, and that splash, that public humiliation, changed everything. I want you to feel what I felt that night, not like a news clip, but like you're standing behind me smelling the polish and bread, hearing the piano stop, watching a man who thinks he owns the room try to crush me with a gesture. This is a story about being underestimated, about small cruelties that add up, about the moment someone decides not to be quiet anymore, and about the messy, complicated way justice sometimes shows up. It's told plain, like a neighbor telling you something over coffee, sometimes soft, sometimes blunt, sometimes shaking with anger, because that's the truth of it. Act 1. The ground beneath my feet. I didn't mean to be anyone's headline. I chose the night shift at the Meridian Club because I liked the rhythm. Trey's tickets, the small authority of carrying a wine bottle with confidence. My husband, Marcus Hale, is a county prosecutor, a guy people whisper about in courtrooms, but I left that world at the door every morning. I wanted to keep my feet on the ground, pay my own phone bill, keep my head down, and earn my tips. Normal felt like freedom. The Meridian was marble and mirrors and very expensive men who loved to hear themselves order things they could never pronounce, but it was work and it paid. My co-workers were patchwork students, single parents, folks making rent, mostly good people who learned to read the room and move like water. Then there was Craig Mercer, the floor manager, polished smile for donors, sharp-edged for anyone he thought could be pushed around. Craig had a habit of singling people out, hair accent the color of their skin, and turning those little comments into rules nobody could fight back against. For months he sipped authority the way others sip scotch. He'd corner a server about a missing side of fries and escalate to theft. He'd suggest someone take a day off. He'd keep a ledger in his head of who was useful and who was a problem. 2 servers I knew left within weeks after he humiliated them in front of customers. They told me later they couldn't afford the cost of dignity. I told myself I'd ride the storm out because I wanted normal, because I had a husband who could take the weight if things got heavy. But I didn't go looking for trouble. The night it all snapped, the VIP table ordered an expensive bottle, a 2008 Domaine LaCroix, and I brought it up from the cellar exactly like I'd been trained. I checked the label twice, opened it properly, poured the ritual taste. The man in the corner nodded, and the glass caught the candlelight. Everything was textbook. Craig appeared out of nowhere like he owned the atmosphere, grabbed the bottle, and accused me of swapping it. Loudly venomous a lie that made eyes turn toward me. "You're switching bottles, aren't you?" he said like a judge giving a verdict, like I'd stolen his lunch money. I told him no, the bottle is right. The guest said it was fine. He didn't care about the facts, he cared about the spectacle. He poured the wine on me, not a splash, but a performance. Red, staining my hair, my apron sliding down my face as if to wash all the dignity off. No one stood. People recorded with their phones, because now everything is proof and performance. And I realized in a cold, bright way that I was very small in that room. Act 2. The arrival and the twist. Craig thought he had finished me. He expected me to run, to be humiliated into silence. He didn't know the truth about that night, that I hit send on a short message to Marcus. He'd told me years ago not to tell him about every small indignity. "Let me do the big stuff," he used to say. But this wasn't small. This was an illegal search, an assault, a public act that crossed lines. I texted Marcus Meridian Club. "They just poured wine on me. Need you here." Then I stood and kept my hands steady. I don't know why I assumed he'd come, only that I needed someone to show up who wouldn't be bought or cajoled into silence. Marcus arrived calm. Not theatrical, not loud. The kind of presence that fills a room because it's centered, not because it yells. When he walked in, the air in the club changed. Craig went from predator to defendant in a second. The bravado leaked out of him like steam. Marcus didn't shout. He asked for facts, documentation, chain of custody, witness names, and when Craig tried the old tricks, he was just misunderstanding. Marcus kept asking for evidence. Then everything tilted. Other staff stepped forward, Not with weaponized accusations, but with small things they had kept. Messages, a list of dates, a text that said, "Don't rock the boat," after someone spoke up, and the cameras in the club had captured far more than Craig intended. Here is the weird, ugly part. The truth that doesn't sit well without Marcus's presence, without the man who could stand in that room and demand records. This probably would have become another hush-money story. That's reality. Power exists, and it shapes who gets heard. That doesn't make justice fair, it makes it real. In that instant, Craig was arrested, on the spot, because he had crossed legal lines repeatedly, and because the evidence wasn't just my say-so, it was written and filmed and witnessed. Act 3. The aftermath and the fight. When the cameras came, news vans, microphones, people who smelled like adrenaline, and deadlines, the story exploded in a way our lives rarely do. The Meridian's owner called lawyers, Craig's wife called connections, their friends tried to spin it into misunderstanding. But the staff had files. 15 complaints over years, emails where managers recommended discretion payouts in envelopes and DAs signed with shaking hands. Once a pattern is there, the dominoes fall. The case went beyond the club's front door. The equal employment folks showed up, investigators took boxes of records, and what had been whispered for years became public record. In court, the video played. Craig's voice saying, "You people," as the wine poured, and people watched, and the jurors watched, and something shifted. The judge read verdicts that felt like punctuation marks: guilty on assault, guilty on unlawful detention fines, community service at minority-owned businesses, mandatory training for the club, and Craig's career, which he'd built on thin privileges, collapsed. But victory wasn't a neat, shiny thing. Craig served his sentence and moved on, but his family was fractured, his name slurred online, his future limited. The Meridian paid fines and agreed to oversight, and some of us stayed to rebuild a workplace that hadn't always protected its people. I started an organization, Service with Dignity, a small nonprofit that helps hospitality workers who face abuse, offering legal consultations, emergency funds, and workshops on documenting harassment. That felt like doing something with the pain instead of letting it sit like a bruise. Here's the part I want you to think about. Would any of this have happened if I hadn't had Marcus? If I was a server without a prosecutor husband, would my video have been noticed? My complaint filed, the NDAs unsealed? The answer is complicated and uncomfortable. Sometimes the people with power are the only way the system notices. That makes me furious and grateful at the same time. Furious that justice requires leverage, grateful that leverage existed when it mattered. You can hold both feelings at once. Cinematic moments in this story didn't come from a script. They came from people deciding to stop being small, from a coworker who pulled screenshots from months ago, from a judge who wouldn't let a pattern be buried, and from me finally choosing not to walk away. I still get messages. Thank yous from folks who felt seen, angry notes from those who think I used influence, and the endless debate online about fairness and power. That's fine. Talk is part of repair. So here's my ask. Drop into the comments and tell me when you see someone humiliated in public. Do you film it? Do you intervene? Do you step away? If you had been at the Meridian, which side would you have been on? And bigger, should access to justice depend on the people you know, or should it be the same for everyone? Be honest, your answers matter. Share a story, if you have one, because the next person who needs help might be watching. If this hit you, hit subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment. The conversation matters more than the verdict. And if you want resources, places to report workplace abuse or to get legal help, check the description below for links to support groups and legal aid. Stories like this don't end with a headline. They keep working through people who choose to speak up to help to change. Be that person. You'll be surprised what a single act of witness can do.